so deep, go so deep, go so deep. Go so deep, go so deep, go so deep. Don't know me no more, ego so free. Don't know evil, no evil, no me. Go so deep, go so deep, go so deep. Go so deep, go so deep, go so deep. No rollie, don't go sleep, don't know sheep. Don't know evil, no evil, no me. It's happening, something is happening. I felt a spirit coming back again. My little magic friend. I'm the bag of skin it casted in. The voice you're hearing on the track is him. Telepathic chin that put the talent in the paladin, like Michael Jackson did when he was black of him. Can't imagine it. So before they bring assassins in and put me in a casket, let me grab a pen. Slice wrist, jab it in, plug it in the main vein and fill it with my blood intravenously. Write my life story, end it with a dot. From the last drop of blood I have to bleed in me. Dead, but I'm resurrected when you're reading me. I put me in ink, corpse got a deity. Yeah, elevation of the Kundalini. If I make it up to heaven's gates, I'ma do graffiti. I don't care if you was Mussolini. I let an enemy, how could an enemy crew defeat me? You don't got the visuals to see me. I can see better in 4D than you do in 3D. I need a queen, if I'ma ever be truly kingly. She put the rubber on me, I'ma bust out, I'm a super genie. Wrote this with a ghost talking to me that I met when I was doing Ouija. Go so deep, go so deep, go so deep. Go so deep, go so deep, go so deep. Don't know me no more, ego so free. Don't know evil, no evil, no me. Go so deep, go so deep, go so deep. Go so deep, go so deep, go so deep. No rollie, don't go sleep, don't know sheep. Don't know evil, no me.
All right. Yes, indeed, family. So let's get right into it. Into Deep Part 2. And the reason why I decided to do Into Deep Part 2, okay, is because Into Deep Part 1 spoke of the same topics that I'll be touching on today. Basically, today I'll just be revisiting and revising the information so the family is knowledgeable about what's going on in the deep state, the deep web, the deep mind, and today we added in the deep south, okay? So if anybody pays attention to news, or if anybody's paying attention to what the media is not necessarily reporting on a 24-hour basis, but they're putting it out there. There's definitely a war taking place between what is known as the deep state and other operatives in the government who are attempting to disrupt their operations. Now, the operations that the deep state are known for operating would be things like child pornography rings, okay? Sex trafficking rings, $20 billion cocaine shipments on JP Morgan owned ships in Philadelphia, proxy wars, spy programs, like when they shot down a drone in Iran, oil wars in many different places in Africa, organ harvesting in places like the UAE, in places like Tel Aviv, in places like many of the different ports in America. You saw the chop shop just got busted in Phoenix, Arizona, right? The feds busted a chop shop, a body shop, not a chop shop where you chop cars up, somewhere where body limbs and body parts and those very expensive body parts, those rare cuts, are being sold for top dollar. I'm going to show a chart to show you the price of your body parts. 2019, your organs are rising. Your organs are rising, right? And you're not organizing and your organs are rising, and that's a problem. So the deep state is at war, all right? Donald Trump and a few of his hitters and whatnot, they are definitely exposing and they're pulling the covers off the network that has been the rat line, is what they call it. When you're talking about with the deep state and the CIA and other shadow government organizations who are in bed, comfortably nestled in with organized crime cartels and mafia, they have what is known as a rat line. A rat line is child trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking, drug trafficking, right? Organ harvesting, guns for drugs, you name it. Whatever deals with under the table money and things that are not necessarily cleared by Congress and what would be considered to be illegal activity inside of an illegal corporate entity. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Now, the deep mind points to artificial learning, all right? Google is at the forefront. Artificial learning, computers are being programmed by programmers to learn on their own. The places that they're learning from is the almighty Google's database, along with other databases. I've been doing a lot of research. I've been looking to see if the machine learning, I'm going to explain what machine learning is in a minute, but the machine learning, I'm trying to see if the machines are learning from the deep web and the dark web along with the surface web, because I know that it's plugged into the surface web, but I'm trying to see if the programmers are plugging in the machine learning, the AI, the artificial intelligence into the deep web. But these are some of the feats of the deep mind. This is what the deep mind can do. Programmers programmed the deep mind computer to go up against some of the best Go players. Go is a game that is, very advanced. They say it's more advanced than chess. So the computer played itself for approximately 48 hours, right? 2 days. And every single time that it was playing itself, it was getting smarter, right? By the end of the 2 days, the deep mind computer or intelligence was able to successfully defeat some of the best Go players in the world. Then they took it into other games and other avenues and whatnot, and the machine is learning and it's becoming wiser, it's becoming more conscious and intelligent by the day as these machines scour the internet or the surface web and receive and just compile data and eat up information and data. So it would now the question would not necessarily arise as to why the internet is being scrubbed at this moment, right? Like, why are they scrubbing the internet? Why are they censoring the internet? Why is Louis Farrakhan being banned from the internet, scrubbed from the internet, removed from the internet? Alex Jones and all of these people. One of the reasons is because now artificial intelligence and machine learning is learning through the internet. It's eating up all of the information. So of course they don't want it to pick up the anti-vaccination information. They don't want it to pick up the information that Farrakhan is bringing. They don't want it to pick up the information that the many conscious channels are bringing. That's why they're censoring them. That's why they're making them non-searchable, and they're removing some of them. They go into those links. You can't search my information on YouTube. You cannot find me on YouTube. I'm non-searchable. They have me outside of that range. I'm non-monetized. I can't make a penny on a YouTube channel. You dig what I'm saying? Channels that even host our videos, channels that host their own videos are becoming demonetized. So this is where we're at right now in 2019, moving into 2020. There is a censorship campaign, and there is a quote unquote First Amendment violation amongst many people who are out here speaking the truth, and not the, not the version of truth that they are co-signing, because they'll allow a sanitized version of truth to seep through. They'll allow victimhood. They'll allow finger pointing. They will allow surface knowledge, surface consciousness, but not deep consciousness, not the into deep type of consciousness, not the rabbit hole. Okay? And we'll talk about the deep web. We're going to get into the deep web in today's presentation. And the deep web, of course, speaks about the unseen. Since everybody is into the unseen so much, since everybody is into the Illuminati, since everybody is into the unknown, or rather the unseen. Well, the unseen is the deep web, and then the dark web. So you function on the surface web. You're operating on 10% of the known internet. The internet is a military installation. It is created by the military for military purposes. It is an installation. It is a weapon system along with an intelligence information data system. So when you function on the surface web, you are functioning on a www dot system. You are functioning on a commercialized weapon, okay? But it's 90%, right? 10% is the surface. 90% of the unknown web is the deep web and the dark web, okay? And you did not know that. A lot of people have no idea whatsoever that they can't fathom, nor can they wrap their minds around internet that exists that you cannot find on www. Because the deep web and the dark web cannot be accessed by www. It's not the World Wide Web. It's a whole nother aspect of the internet. And people are building and communicating. And now that I think about it, of course the machines are learning, because 90% of the internet is the dark and the deep web. You could go there on the TOR, which is the Onion router. Go and research how to download the Onion router. That is a way to take you on the intranet, not the internet, the intranet, the Ethernet. You know, the deep web and the dark web. Okay, the router, the same place that Neo, or my guy Mr. Anderson, that's the same place that the Matrix movie opened up. He was on the deep web jugging. He was selling not narcotics. He was selling digital drugs. He was jugging. He was on the Silk Road. He was on the dark web. He was not on the www. Right? He was off the grid, and he was communicated to by Morpheus and Trinity, who were also on the deep web and places like that in encrypted rooms. Right? He was jugging because they came to his door. The lady with the white rabbit came to his door to pick up a pack. The whole crew came to pick up a package. They came to pick up some drugs. Or that version, the version of drugs in the future, which would be, it would be a digital sensation. It would be something that would be hooked into your neural system, you know, like the thing that Elon Musk just proposed, which was Neuralink. And we'll talk about Neuralink. So we'll talk about how far Deep Mind is right now by tapping into Neuralink and other advances in science to show you the advancement of artificial intelligence, and to encourage the coders and the programmers out there to program your own version of AI. We should have our, where's our version of a Siri? Where is our version of an Alexa? We can do that. That is possible. That's doable. That is that's attainable in the now. We don't have to fantasize or slip into some sort of, you know, fantasy land and whatnot and try to talk about in the future, brother, in the near future. No, right now we could create machine learning. We could program it to do for us, because there's a whole bunch of nerds and whatnot, and people in Palo Alto and Silicon Valley, Silicon Alley, and other places like Asia and Tel Aviv, where they're programming powerful gods to work for them. This is the Industrial Revolution, what, 7.0? 7.0? This is a part of the Industrial Revolution, because when everything becomes automated, it is going to be the level up of people and human beings and their limitations of what they can do based off of their energy output, based off of their quote unquote information output. We're not as fast as the machines that are working the assembly line at Ford at the moment. We're not as fast as the machines it's already AI. It's already automation. It's already machines taking over, because did you ever see the program, how it's done or how it's made? They are supercomputers and super machines doing manufacturing and industrial work on big levels, my nigga. That is artificial intelligence. They're just leveling. It's just 2.0ing it. They're leveling it up. It's going to be leveled up. So if everything is going to be automated and the machines are going to be working at an exponential rate, that means that inventory is going to increase. That means that markets are going to expand. That means that the overall cap is going to increase and there's going to be more money to be made. That's what that means. So we as a collective, first and foremost, and then us as an individual, should be arduously seeking out individuals who can help design, conceptualize, and to create both technology, intellectual property, robots, programs, algorithms, to be in alignment with the future and with the now, where it's at. It's not difficult. It's not hard. You know what I mean? I was just at a summit on Wednesday called a Revolt Summit. It was right there at the King's Theater in Flatbush. And Puff Daddy came out, P. Diddy, Sean Combs. Revolt is his platform. So he was the one that was behind it. Charlemagne was there, Joe Budden, a whole bunch of people. And they were bringing out people who were interested in getting into the music industry and wanted to throw their hat into the music industry. They could do the same thing for coders, blurs, which are black nerds, black girls who code, everybody who looks melanated, everybody from the continent who taught themselves how to code, everybody from the hood who went online, went to GitHub, went on YouTube, went to the thousands of online schools that teach you how to app develop and learn code and whatnot, and be a part of the gods who are responsible for writing out the future. Because the future, as you know it, in this quote-unquote digitized matrix or this quote-unquote holographic world, the future is at the hand of the coders. That's a fact. The future is at the hand of the coders. And I'm not giving them all of the power like that, but the future is at the hand. Nigga, it's Revenge of the Nerds. The future is at the hands of the coders, because coding is the language of the future. Does that not make sense? If coding is the language of the future, if the coding language is what's gotten us to where we're at today, because, you know, we are in the future. You know what I mean? You know, spoiler alert, nigga, we're in the future. We're in the future, right? And the coders and other people, the developers, right, are akin to what you saw in the Matrix with the man called the architect. The guy in the white room with the white beard and whatnot, who was coding and writing the future. The oracle who you were introduced to, who was in the kitchen baking cookies, those are your coders. Those are your coders. Your divination, whoever you have as an oracle, whoever divines for you, that's your coder. They're out here writing the code. And the ones who are in Silicon Valley, who are building out these apps, who are building out these algorithms, because algorithms run the world. There's a lecture that I did called The Evolution Will Be Digitized. You can find it right now online just by a YouTube search, right? The Evolution Will Be Digitized. And we explain in the Evolution Will Be Digitized, we got into the beginning of, you know, technology and computers as we know it these days. And we explain the West African origins behind all computing languages because it's a binary language, zeros and ones. And zeros and ones are akin to what is known as divination systems like the I Ching, okay? Where they're dealing with yes and no's and zeros and ones and whatnot. The I Ching, when they throw bones, when they throw coins, when they throw pennies, when they throw cowrie shells and whatnot, divining, utilizing, that's a form, that's a language. And that language has been translated into CSS, Python, Ruby for Rails, all of these different languages. The Django is one of the languages of computers, you know, and our people have it in our DNA inherently to adapt. That's why there are young men in junkyards in Africa, right, on a continent, building technology, building out, making inventions, inventing shit in the junkyard, right? That engineering DNA is kicking in, the mathematician DNA is kicking in, the natural builder, the MOTEP inside of them, the MOTEP DNA is kicking in. And these Africans, these young Africans are showing improvement. These young 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds in Oxford, in America, melanated. There's not too many non-melanated 9-year-olds in Ivy League school colleges. These 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds who are in Mensa right now, and the ones that are in colleges, they're showing you that their DNA is going online. They're repeating what the ancestors in the 1800s were doing, because by the time they were 18, they were already accomplished authors. They had their PhD and their, you know what I mean? They were doctors, you know what I'm talking about? This is in the 1800s, you know, around the time of the 100 plus melanated inventors, all right? We spoke multiple languages. Some of us were even world traveled by our early adulthood, okay? Everywhere that we went, we spoke the language. This is us in our proper persona, in our natural self. So that natural self has been disrupted. That natural self has been somewhat held back. That natural self has been subjugated by a force, by an energy, by a spirit. And that spirit is being hoisted and pushed by a people. And those people are some of the people that we're going to be touching on today. In particular, those people that I'm speaking of are the tribes of Europeans who came up out of Europe in 1493 and subsequently created what is known as the New World. The creation of the New World was one that was done in blood, in a lot of death and a lot of destruction, fire, a lot of rape, a lot of pillaging, a lot of massacres, a lot of atrocities in the name of the Roman Catholic Church and the crowns of Europe, in particular, the crowns of Portugal, which was known as Aragon, and Castile, which is the crowns of Spain and Portugal, by way of the Holy Roman Catholic Church, aka the Holy See, the same place, the Vatican, where they found bones underneath the Vatican. Okay, just this week, right after we did the first part of In Too Deep, they found these bones, thousands of bones, thousands upon thousands of bones inside of, underneath the quote unquote Vatican, where they say they store bones. But this was like a trapdoor underneath the Vatican, you know, where they do a lot of rituals and they do a lot of sacrifice. You know, it's probably some bones on Lolita Island, you know. But what that shows me beyond any reasonable doubt is that's the ancestors coming above ground. When you excavate, when you find hidden, buried bones, when you find dry bones, when you find hidden bodies and they get excavated and they come above ground, especially from the catacombs of the Vatican, where a lot of things never see the light of day. oh, you're talking symbolically that the ancestors are showing you that this is the age of revelation, and they're revealing some things, and things are becoming to the surface, and things are becoming uncovered. And there's some people out there that are doing that. And that's how the ancestors talk black to me. That's how they speak back to me. You know what I'm talking about? That's how they throw one back. You know. So we're seeing things unfold before our very eyes. All right? So we're going to talk about these people right now, at this moment, in this juncture in time. And these European tribes, the Germanic tribes, right? That's the Germans. The Spanish tribes, or the Spaniards, that's Spain. That's the white zaddy who got everybody talking Spanish in DR, Peru, Panama, Cuba, Puerto Rico. This is their zaddy. This is the one who brought that tongue, along with the cross, along with the sword, along with the syphilis, along with the gonorrhea, along with anal sex, along with homosexuality, along with bestiality, along with pedophilia. They brought all that, right? Along with the cocaine, or rather, not necessarily the cocaine, but drug culture, illegal drug culture, because they was chewing on coca leaves, they was smoking bud, making bud tea and whatnot. They had all kind of herbs, which are which they deem Schedule 1 substances and whatnot, demonizing them. But I'm going to explain why all of these things have taken place. You understand? Why all of these things are what they are to this day. It started somewhere, and we can identify where it started, so we're going to get right into it. In the documentary, this is called domo, right? The keyword domo, okay? In the documentary, Newcomb was careful to provide translations of the non-English words used, and he often emphasized how English translations made obvious the deepest meanings of the Latin words. For example, he translated deprimentar as to subjugate, and noted the variety of meanings for the root domo: to subdue, subjugate, tame, till, cultivate, which places words such as dominion in a whole new light. Understood this way, it is difficult to accept Christian apologists' insistence that dominion means stewardship. For the colonized indigenes, it clearly did not. For many Indians, it meant loss of culture, oppression, and death. The doctrine of discovery established a spiritual, political, and legal justification for colonization and seizure of land not inhabited by Christians. It has been invoked since Pope Alexander VI issued the papal bull Inter Caetera in 1493. The papal decree aimed to justify Christian explorers' claims on land and waterways that allegedly discovered and promote Christian domination and superiority, and has been applied in Africa, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and the Americas. So white supremacy or Roman supremacy, white supremacy or Roman Catholic supremacy, white supremacy or European supremacy, because they were not calling themselves white in 1493. They're not all necessarily white that's doing this, right? The aspect of Christian domination and superiority that's being powered up by papal bulls in the doctrine of discovery, nigga, that's not white. That's not white. So we have to correct some of these terms. I will call it Christian supremacy, because that will put it into a better light as to what is going on. Because when you go to the continent right now, nigga, it's Christian supremacy, okay? It's Catholic supremacy. When you go to all of these third world countries, where the people is hurting, but they still Christian, and there's a Roman Catholic church in the center of that town or the center on that island and whatnot, and there's child pedophilia going on, and there's child prostitution going on, and there's a drug problem going on, where that shit is a narco state / Roman Catholic provenance that they dominated. And they're speaking their tongue there, whatever the Roman Catholic tongue is, whether it's Portuguese, whether it's Spanish, or it's a form of English, right? But in particular, it's that Roman tongue. It's the Spanish tongue. Because Rome was in bed with Spain, and Spain was in bed with the Portuguese by way of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. You have to remember this. This is the Battle of 1491, the Alhambra, when they defeated the Moors, and then they marched forward in 1492 to conquer in the name of their Christ, their egregor, their demiurge. It's not the same Christ from the Ethiopia. It's not the Coptic. It's not Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ, not Christ. The title, the Christ, means the Christ consciousness. That was a title. They have many the Christes, right? There's more than just Jesus the Christ. There's other the Christ, because the Christ is the Christ consciousness. And when you attain Christ consciousness and you reach a certain level, you are anointed. You have the third eye is awoken, and you awoke, my nigga. You're lit. You're turned on. You're conscious. You know what I'm talking about? You're on your mission. You're on your man know thyself path. So you become anointed. You naturally have anointed oils just, coming, royal oils, you're just anointed. You have that glow, you have that shine, you glowed up, right? Not Caesar Bourgeois, my nigga. Not the Christ that they created, not the Christ that Constantine and them created. Not that that's a demiurge, right? That's who they went and shed blood in his name. I'm gonna read on. If an explorer proclaims to have discovered the land in the name of a Christian European monarch, and he plants a flag in its soil and reports his discovery to the European rulers and returns to occupy it, that land is now his, even if someone else was there first. These are the same people that had the audacity to tell the squaw to go home. Should the original occupants insist on claiming that the land is theirs, the discoverer can label the occupant's way of being on the land inadequate according to European standards. European standards at that time they were just coming out of the Dark Ages. European standards at that time was pedophilia, bestiality, homosexuality, incest, murder, rape. You understand? Sorcery. They were going through the Inquisition, so they were burning people at the stake who showed any signs of holistic knowledge. So you can imagine what they did they were burning people who showed any signs of spiritualness inside of Europe. So imagine what they did when they got into the Americas, where everybody was on that, where the whole goddamn island was shamans and brujas. You know what I'm talking about? Imagine what they went over there and did. They brought the Inquisition over there with them. That's why they would reach there and they would immediately seek out the chief and then body him right there in front of everybody and burn him and cut him up and eat him and then start killing people and then converting them. That's what they would do. They would set it off. And they were traumatizing these people. 90 million died in 10 years. We're going to get to this. In the name of this papal bull right here. So anytime you meet a European, before y'all even get to talk, they want to come march with you. They want to talk about they feel your pain. You immediately make sure that they denounce the papal bulls of 1493. They denounce Pope motherfucking, they got to denounce Pope Alexander VI. I'm talking about the Women's March. I'm talking about all your LBGT friends. I'm talking about motherfucking Becky at the water cooler. If they want to talk to you, if they want to stand around you, you make them denounce the doctrine of discovery, all of they popes, the papal bulls, and you know what I'm talking about? George Washington and all of the founding fathers, I bet you that you'll have a bum fights, a World Star video on your hands, because they're not going to do that. They're going to pop off on you. You know what I'm talking about? They're going to drop the goddamn Starbucks and get to fighting because you have them cornered. You're going to activate their white fragility. You got them cornered, my nigga. Checkmate. Nigga, checkmate. That's a social experiment. I need you to carry that out. And be prepared to Mayweather these niggas, because they going Pacquiao on you. You know what I mean? We should just set them up, get them all in the building one day for, like, you know, we should just bait them and drop that bomb on them. The same way that they make niggas denounce Farrakhan. Yo, before we even begin, hold on. Let me just say something. Read the Doctrine of Discovery. Read all of the facts and be like, after you hear all of this, I need you to publicly denounce all of these popes, Pope Innocent, Pope Gregory, Pope Alexander, Constantine. I need you to denounce the Doctrine of Discovery. I need you to denounce the Intercatera. I need you to denounce Manifest Destiny. I need you to denounce the Founding Fathers. They will not do it. And if they don't do it, you got to set it off. You got to pop off on them. You got to bang on them and chase them out the building, because they showing you, nigga, we've been riding on you since this day. This is our marching orders. This is our motherfucking Bible. This is our Constitution. But don't take my word for it. I don't know what I'm talking about. Should the original occupants insist on claiming that the land is theirs, the discoverer could label the occupants' way of being on the land inadequate according to European standards. This ideology supported the dehumanization of those living on the land and their dispossession, murder, and forced assimilation. Forced assimilation is conversion to being Catholic. Forced assimilation is making niggas speak Spanish. Forced assimilation is to look at the white man like he's God. The doctrine fueled white supremacy insofar as white European settlers claimed that they were instruments of divine design and possessed cultural superiority. That's where we're at today. That's the problem that we have today. That's what's fueling the self-hate. That's what's fueling all of the issues that we're having at the core of our dysfunction, is the fact that they came through and they convinced niggas, black people, Spanish people, Puerto Ricans, goddamn Dominicans, Ecuadorians, you know what I'm saying, Hondurans and whatnot. They convinced them that they were instruments of divine design and that they possess cultural superiority. White ice is colder than black ice. Bottom line. And that's when niggas is like, oh man, y'all always talk about problems. What's the solutions? Well, you fucking derelict. The solutions is to reverse engineer that shit right there. The solutions, my nigga, is to get back into your proper persona. The solutions is to start seeing black ice as colder than white ice. That's the solution, because that's what worked for us. Unfortunately, that's the shit that we're going to have to get back into, nigga. The curly fest is this weekend. Translation, if you don't got curls, you can't be there. That's what we got to get on. You know what I'm talking about? We got to get into those spaces. You don't got curls, my nigga. You're not. No. You get to buy the DVD or you can watch the live stream. But if you don't got curls, you can't be on the land. This grid is for curls only. Non-ether. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, you can have the curly. You can have the baby hair. But no. It's shit like that. It's just, we have to get back into our cultural being superior. We got to get back into us being divine beings of instruments of divine design. Nigga, we got to be the flute of God. We have to be the divine instruments of God. Brothers like my younger brother, not my brother like my homeboy, my blood brother, KT the Arch Degree, he gives you the science of how we are instruments of divine design from a cellular on a molecular level, go and build it all the way up to where you see us in the flesh. He'll give you that cloth. You know what I'm talking about? His cloth got rhinestones. He'll give you that cloth. Blue Pill will give you that cloth of how we are, who we are on a gematria level, numerically, through the Kabbalah, right? Look. Make sure you get into this. Make sure you know who you are. You know what I'm talking about? Don't act like this. Oh, the Kabbalah evil, man. That shit evil, dog. You retard. The people who are running the world. It's a small group of them. It ain't even a lot of them. It's a handful of them running shit. What do you think? Whatever their power, whatever they're using to get power or to stay in power or to wield their power, you need to find out what the fuck that's about. You need to find out what the hell that is. How dare niggas say that they're a Christian and you don't know how to read Hebrew? You don't know the Hebrew alphabet. You don't know Aleph, Beth, nigga. You know what I'm talking about? You don't know that those words are numbers. You don't know the gematria. You niggas is talking about Corinthians 2:3, but you're not reading it from a Kabbalah, from a Hebraic standpoint, nigga. You're not reading the original translation. You're reading it in English, nigga. Nigga, please. You niggas is elementary. Nigga, that's baby food. Do you know what people are doing with the Bible when they apply the right tools to it, nigga? Do you know? That's why I won't throw the Bible out. I'm not saying throw the Bible out, the Helios Biblios. Nigga, that's a spell book. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the Roman Catholic Church, nigga, is the center of the problems that we're having, nigga. That's the malware. That's the virus. That's what I'm saying. The significance of the doctrine continues to be debated. According to David Wilkins, it is more complicated than just saying the Pope gave European Catholics the right to colonize and to convert. In reality, the absolute denial of native land rights was replaced less than 50 years later when Charles V sought the advice of Francisco de Vitoria as to what the Spanish could legally and morally claim in the New World. Vitoria, in a clear rebuttal to the Pope and the discovery notion, declared that the native people were the true owners of their lands. We know that after he did that, that shit started wars in Europe. You know what I'm talking about? 100-year wars and whatnot. And that shit didn't mean nothing because they went and murdered and pillaged those, they pillaged the indigenous and they did a genocide right after that. All right? This is Christopher Columbus, Queen Isabella, and King Ferdinand. He's bringing Indians, right, back from America. This is supposed to be an Indian right here. He's bringing these Indians to them to show these monarchs what he discovered. This is them discovering in the name of Christ when they pull up on the land and they start murdering shit. You know what I mean? After they plant their flags and they talk that scary ass Latin and shit, and then they get to bodying shit. This is how they split up the world. This is the New World right there. España, that's the Americas, and Portugal got Africa. They got the Gold Coast, anywhere where it's a coast. Pepper Coast, Gold Coast, Ivory Coast, all of those coasts, Cape Verde, all of those were taken by the Portuguese at first, all right? They were claimed by the Portuguese, and then later on when they carved up Africa in the Berlin Conference and whatnot, then all of these other European nations and whatnot get to take pieces of it. They carve it up like a pie. But prior to that, the goddamn Pope in them, they was the ones who had claiming of that land. So I'm gonna reveal or read different papal bulls that comprise what is known as the doctrine of discovery. The first one that we have is the papal bull DUMSDIVERSAS. You know how you have D-U-M, DUMSDIVERSAS, D-I-V-E-R-S-A-S. It was written on the 18th of June, 1452. Pope Nicholas V issued the papal bull DUMSDIVERSAS on 18 June 1452. It authorized Alfonso VI of Portugal to reduce any Saracens and pagans and any unbelievers to perpetual slavery. I'm going to repeat that again because whenever you hear the word Saracens, that shit should set off an alarm. Whenever you're in church and your grandmama talking down to the Saracens, well, she talking down to her in the double elbow, okay? Because she's a fucking Saracen. You know what I'm talking about? She was a Saracen. She don't know that she's a descendant of a Saracen. She's an Ados, an American descendant of Saracens. All right, because the Saracens are the Moors and the Muslims, and the Saracen is code word for African Muslims. Okay, so DUMSDIVERSAS, right? Thank you for that cash app. Yes, DUMSDIVERSAS is the papal bull that started Black slavery or slavery of Moors and Africans. It said to reduce, right, any Saracens and pagans and any other unbelievers to perpetual slavery. This facilitated the Portuguese slave trade from West Africa. The same Pope wrote the bull Romanus Pontifex on January the 5th, 1455 to the same Alfonso. As a follow-up to the DUMSDIVERSAS, it extended the Catholic nations of Europe dominion over discovered lands during the Age of Discovery. Along with sanctifying the seizure of non-Christian lands, it encouraged the enslavement of native non-Christian peoples in African and the New World. All of my ADOS brothers and sisters, to the movement that you brothers are spearheading, I would say to you, this here is the beginning of your journey to get retribution and to get restoration and to get what's that called? Reparations. It's by discovering the Romanus Pontifex and the DUMSDIVERSAS. You start there, my good brothers and sisters. That's where your journey begins. That's when you begin to indict the popes of Rome, also the crowns of Europe, as being the progenitors of the chattel slavery in which your ancestors suffered from. Okay? But they started slaving our people in 1452 in the name of the church. Okay? So they took land and they took people off that land. Then they claimed that land and they renamed that land, and they're on that land to this day, rounding people up and doing the same thing with ICE and with their goddamn Donald Trump deportations and whatnot. So who's gonna deport them? Because they're not from these lands. Who the fuck is who's gonna round them up and send them home? What is it gonna take for us to be a part of that reality, to where that's what's gonna have to happen? That they're gonna have to be exposed for their papal bulls and for the fact that they took land in the name in an illegal way, right? On paper, we can find the paper, we could show the paper, we got receipts. And who's gonna say, well, it's time that this shit ends right now? Because that's what it's gonna take. Because they're not leaving your land. They're not going to stop raping and pillaging and killing and doing everything and destroying the land. Because as you can see, they have marching orders by the Pope is the big homie. They're not listening to nobody. The Pope is on the line like Tyrone, nigga, with God. The Pope is you know what I mean? The Pope is the head honcho, nigga. You know what I'm talking about? That's honcho. So they're not trying to hear you. And Al Sharpton, who they gonna try? They said, take me to your leader. Niggas don't got no leader. And the leaders are buffoons and laughable. So they're not listening to you. They're saying that you're not qualified to listen to because your leader is a snitch. They call Al Sharpton niggas leader. And then dropped the article about how he's an informant. Then it was like Jesse Jackson. Messi Jackson is your leader. And we all know his story. So they're giving you all of these defunct, you know what I'm talking about, leaders, and they're like, okay, well, I have the Pope that I'm listening to. I'm following Pope. I got a Pope that talks to God, nigga. You don't have no sovereigns that we have to listen to. So it don't even. It's like at this point you're wasting your time. You just got to get busy with putting the receipts out. Like, you're not gonna change them. They're not listening to you. They're not gonna stop doing what they've been doing. They are that somebody wrote their code. It's like if you write a code for a self-driving car, nigga, it's gonna drive. They're driving. Their code has already been written. It's written in their DNA. Like Nas said, nigga, it was written. It's a code that they're following. Little Timmy is born and he turns into Chucky, nigga. He's just on code. You know what I'm saying? This is in their DNA. They wrote this shit in their code, bro. They were born into this war. And you obviously are born into cowardice. You're being born neutered. You're not born, you ain't on your Lion King. Nigga, you're like the lion from Madagascar. You know what I'm saying? You're domesticated. You're not free like Simba. You're not, nigga, you're not in your primal self. You're not in your alpha self. You're in your alfalfa self. You're not primal. You're domesticated. You like the lion and let the dogs come and smack them up that I saw on the internet the other day. Niggas is not in there. You know what I'm saying? They not in their primal self. They been subdued, nigga. They got converted to Christians. You turn from Muhammad to Alfonso. Nigga, you went from Mustafa ibn Allah to goddamn, you know what I'm saying? You turned into fucking Alejandro. Niggas got converted. And with that conversion, they converted your lifestyle. They converted your sexuality too. All right, let's read. We weighing all singular the premises with due meditation, and noting that since we had formerly by other letters of ours granted among other things free and ample faculty to the aforesaid King Alfonso to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed in the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and to appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, countries, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his and their use and profit by having secured the said faculty, the said King Alfonso, or by his authority, the aforesaid infinite, justly and lawfully has acquired and possessed and doth possess these islands, lands, harbors, and seas. Come on, this is a fucking spell. Do you hear this shit? Nigga, this is a spell. This the shit that they was reading when they would step off the ship, when they had the scroll and whatnot, nigga, in Latin. This is what they marching with. And you niggas is trying to have conferences, and you niggas is having rallies and crying boo-hooing at your marches about what they doing to niggas in these streets. Nigga, do you see how Rome is moving? Stop playing with me. You wasting my time. You niggas we just wasting time. There's nothing to talk about. How could you be integrated with something like this? How could you integrate into the system? Nigga, this is what they mark. They still rolling with this. That's what the deep state is about. Okay? That's what the deep state is about. That's what this is what their aspirations to be in deep space. That's what that's about. That's what the deep web is about. They're sharing a lot of their information. These are they're participating in criminal activities like trafficking, like organ harvesting, like pedophilia. You know what I mean? All of these things is that this shit is at play. Facts. This is at play. So basically, what I just read was the papal bull that gives King Alfonso and his successors and the rest of Europe the right to these lands that we now call the Caribbean, South America and Central America, North America, right? We have proof. The Cape Verdes of the world, the Ghanas of the world. We got proof that they took these lands and they Christianized these lands, and they basically committed genocide on these lands in the name of their Christian nation. In 1493, Alexander VI issued the bull Inter Caetera, stating one Christian nation did not have the right to establish dominion over lands previously dominated by another Christian nation, thus establishing the law of nations. Go and research the law of nations. Together, the DUMSDIVERSAS, the Romanist Pontifex, and the Inter Caetera came to serve as the basis and justification for the doctrine of discovery, the global slave trade of the 15th and 16th centuries, and the age of imperialism. So if you ever get a chance to go in the time machine and change time, you might want to go and change that. If you ever get mad creative with your pen and you want to create something in the veins of Afrofuturism and you want to put yourself back in time, well, there you have it, my nigga. There's your motherfucking launch pad. That's how, go John O'Connor that right there. All right? Let me read the Bull Romanus Pontifex from Nicholas V from 1454. Nicholas, bishop, servant of the servants of God for perpetual remembrance. The Roman pontiff, successor of the key bearer of the heavenly kingdom and vicar of Jesus Christ, contemplating with the Father's mind all the several climes of the world and the characteristics of all the nations dwelling in them, and seeking and desiring the salvation of all, wholesomely ordains and disposes upon careful deliberation those things which he sees will be agreeable to the divine majesty, and by which he may bring the sheep entrusted by him to him by God into the single divine fold, and may acquire for them the reward of eternal felicity and obtain pardon for their souls. This we believe will more certainly come to pass through the aid of the Lord if we bestow suitable favors and special graces on those Catholic kings and princes who, like athletes and intrepid champions of the Christian faith, as we know by the evidence of facts, not only restrain the savage excesses of the Saracens and of other infidels, enemies of the Christian name, but also for the defense and increase of the faith, vanquish them and their kingdoms and habitations, those situated in the remotest parts unknown to us, and subject them to their own temporal dominion, sparing no labor and expense, in order that those kings and princes, relieved of all obstacles, may be the more animated to the prosecution of so salutary and laudable a work. We have lately heard, not without great joy and gratification, how our beloved son, the noble personage Henry, Infante of Portugal, uncle of our most dear son in Christ, the illustrious Alfonso, king of the kingdoms of Portugal and Algarve, treading in the footsteps of John, of famous memory, king of the said kingdoms, his father, and greatly inflamed with zeal for the salvation of souls and with fervor of faith, as a Catholic and true soldier of Christ, the creator of all things, and a most active and courageous defender and intrepid champion of the faith in him, has aspired from his early youth. God damn it, I can't read this. They just, this shit sounds like Game of Thrones. Like when she announced that, remember when the mother, I am the mother of dragon, the subduer of all men, the freer of slaves. the marcher with the, you know what I mean? Like, nah, I can't. This shit sounds like a spell. Okay. All right, let me jump into something real quick. I'm gonna just continue reading. It's like a run-on sentence. They just go in it. And revered throughout the whole world, even in the most remote and undiscovered places, and also to bring into the bosom of his face the peradventurous enemies of him, and the life-giving cross by which we have been redeemed, namely the Saracens and all other infidels whatsoever, and how after the city of Quetta, situated in Africa, had been subdued by the said King John to his dominion, and after many wars had been waged, sometimes in person, by the said infante, is basically like infidels. Although in the name of the said King John, against the enemies and infidels aforesaid, not without the greatest labors and expense, and with dangers and loss of life and property, and the slaughter of very many of their natural subjects, the said infante, being neither enfeebled nor terrified by so many and great labors, dangers, and losses, but growing daily and more zealous in prosecuting this his so laudable and pious purpose, has peopled with Orthodox Christians certain solitary islands in the ocean sea, and has caused churches and other pious places to be there, founded and built, in which divine service is celebrated. Also, by the laudable endeavor and industry of said infant, very many inhabitants or dwellers in divers islands situated in the said sea, coming to the knowledge of true God, have received holy baptism, to the praise and glory of God, the salvation of the souls of many, the propagation also of the Orthodox faith, and the increase of divine worship. They're basically saying, by killing and waging war and continuing to, go over there, even though we're getting slaughtered, continue to invade, continue to, go over there, continue to spread the faith. We are baptizing them. We have them, we're increasing our divine worship. Moreover, since some time ago, it had come to the knowledge of the said infant that never, or at least not within the memory of men, had it been customary to sail on this ocean sea toward the southern and eastern shores, and that it was so unknown to us Westerners that we had no certain knowledge of the people of those parts, believing that he would best perform his duty to God in this matter, if by his effort and industry that sea might become navigatable as far as to the Indians who are said to worship the name of Christ, and that thus he must be able to enter into relation with them and to incite them to aid the Christians against the Saracens and other such enemies of the faith, and might also be able forthwith to subdue certain Gentile and pagan peoples living between, who are certainly free from infection by the sect of the most impious Mahomet or Muhammad, and to preach and cause to be preached to them the unknown but most sacred name of Christ, strengthened, however, always by the royal authority. He has not ceased for 25 years past to send almost yearly an army of the people of the said kingdoms with the greatest labor, danger, and expense in very swift ships called caravels to explore the sea and coastlands towards the south of the Antarctic pole. So what they're saying is every year they've been sending armies, they've been sending divisions, they've been sending people to spy and to see on the lands, but they were sailing out looking for this land where they said that they were Indian Christians who basically were following the same Christ or the same, story that they were following and believing in the same Christ. Now, when you get into the history of Central America, they would say prior to the conquistadors coming, we already was fucking with Jesus. Okay? Guadalupe, and they had other things that they were in common with. So when these Europeans came, they basically did not, they were already in alignment with some of these tribes, and that those tribes worked with those Europeans to subdue and to basically conquer their people who were not Christians. And that's also what happened in the Congo, in Africa, when the Portuguese pulled up and whatnot. They got with the Christianized Africans who were already on their Jesus shit, and those people helped them subdue the Saracens. Translation, the black Muslims. Translation, the black Moors. Translation, niggas, okay? And they put them on ships, and they subdued them, and they slaughtered them, and they enslaved them because they had the papal bull, they had the paperwork, they had the edict of the popes to enslave them, and they gave that to Africans and was like, that's the Pope, nigga. The Pope said that. And then the Africans, they got into full step and fetch it, coon. They got on the coon train. You know what I'm talking about? They hopped right on the coon train, and they went and did the dirty work for these Christians, or for these Catholics, for that matter. And so it came to pass that when a number of ships of this kind had explored and taken possession of many harbors, islands, and seas, they at length came to the province of Guinea, and having taken possession of some islands and harbors in the sea adjacent to that province, sailing farther, they came to the mouth of a certain great river, commonly supposed to be the Nile. And war was waged for some years against the people of those parts in the name of the said King Alfonso and of the Infante. And in it very many islands of that neighborhood were subdued and peacefully possessed, as they are still possessed together with the adjacent sea. Thence also many Guinea men and other Negroes taken by force, and some by barter of unprohibited articles, or by other lawful contract or of purpose, have been sent to said kingdoms. Do you see what they just said? That they conquered Saracens from one part, and they sent them to the other part. That was the beginning of the slave trade. So when you got black men in Brazil saying that they came from certain parts of Africa, right? That was a result of that slave trade, or that war, those wars that were taking place. They were taking certain people off of one island, and they were sending them to the other island. They were taking Indians out of they were taking Mayans and Incas and whatnot and sending them to other places in the Caribbean. That wasn't, they didn't all come from, they were disrupted in the 14th and in the 15th century. And before the slave trade that we became familiar with, they were already moving them around. Look, a large number of these have been converted to the Catholic faith. And it is hoped by the help of divine mercy that if such progress be continued with them, either these people will be converted to the faith, or at least the souls of many of them will be gained for Christ. Meaning sacrifice. The souls of many of them will be gained for Christ. So when they cut your throat in the name of Christ, Christ gains your soul. Nigga, when you kill that rooster in the name of Christ, Christ gains the rooster, right? So either they're going to convert them or they're going to sacrifice them. When they burning 100 people at a stake, my nigga, what do you think? That's a ritual. What do you think? They sending you up to that demon? They sending you up to that fucking, to that demiurge that they done summoned up, because he wants blood. He wants burnt bodies. He wants charred remains. He wants blood. He wants labor, my nigga. He wants sweat. He wants tears. That is, they have a God of pain. They have a God of subjugation. They have a God of the lower self. talk black to me. That's who they feeding, right? That's who they feed every day. But since, as we are informed, although the king and infante aforesaid, these are white people, infante. That's the white, whenever I say infant or infante, it's spelled infante. I might be pronouncing it wrong, but when I say that, I'm talking about the Europeans. I'm talking about that must be identifying the infant Christians or the infant Catholics or the infant, or, you know, that's them. Okay? But since, as we are informed, although the king and infante aforesaid, who with so many and so great dangers, labors, and expenses, and also with loss of so many natives of their said kingdoms. Oh, well, maybe, all right, hold on. Very many of them have perished in those expeditions, depending only upon the aid of those natives, have caused those provinces to be explored and have acquired and possessed such harbors, islands, and seas as aforesaid as the true lords of them. Fearing lest strangers induced by covetous should sail to those parts, and desiring to usurp to themselves the perfection, fruit, and praise of this work, or at least to hinder it, should therefore, either for the sake of gain or through malice, carry or transmit irons, arms, wood used for construction, and other things and goods prohibited to be carried to infidels, or should teach those infidels the art of navigation, whereby they would become more powerful and obstinate enemies to the king and infante, and the prosecution of this enterprise would either be hindered or would perhaps entirely fail, not without great offense to God and great reproach to all Christianity. To prevent this and to conserve their right and possession under certain most severe penalties than expressed, have prohibited and in general have ordained that none, unless with their sailors and ships and on payment of certain tribute and with an express license previously obtained from the said king or infante, should presume to sail to the said provinces or to trade in their ports or to fish in the sea. Although the king and infante have taken this action, yet in time it might happen that persons or other kingdoms or nations, led by envy, malice, or covetousness, might presume, contrary to the prohibition aforesaid, without license and payment of such tribute, to go to the said provinces, and in the provinces, harbors, islands, and seas so acquired, to sail, trade, and fish, and thereupon between King Alfonso and the infante, who would by no means suffer themselves to be so trifled within these things, in the presumptuous persons aforesaid, very many hatreds, rancors, dissensions, wars, and scandals, to the highest offense of God and danger of souls. Translation, what they're saying is, they're locking off the places that they've conquered to other nations to come and fish, trade, and to basically eat wherever they are trapping. They're like, you can't come and trap where we trapping, okay? There's another intercatera, the legal battle and spiritual war against the native people, the bull intercatera, all right? So this is the spiritual war against them. Alexander, bishop, servant of the servants of God, to the illustrious sovereigns, our very dear son in Christ, Ferdinand, king, and our very dear daughter in Christ, Isabella, Queen of Castile, Leon, Aragon, Sicily, and Granada, health and apostolic benediction. So this is the Queen of Sicily, okay, guys? That's who was responsible for setting off slavery, as you will find in this bull. Among other works well pleasing to the divine majesty and cherished of our heart. This assuredly ranks highest, that in our times, especially the Catholic faith and the Christian religion be exalted and be everywhere increased and spread, that the health of souls be cared for, and that barbarous nations be overthrown and brought to the faith itself. Wherefore, inasmuch as by the favor of divine clemency, we, though of insufficient merits, have been called to this holy see of Peter, recognizing that as true Catholic kings and princes, such as we have known you always to be, as your illustrious deeds already known to almost the whole world declare, you not only eagerly desire, but with every effort, zeal, and diligence, without regard to hardship, expenses, dangers, with the shedding even of your blood, are laboring to that end, recognizing also that you have long since dedicated to this purpose your whole soul and all of your endeavors, at witness in these times with so much glory to the divine name and your recovery of the kingdom of Granada from the yoke of the Saracens, that's the Moors. We therefore are rightly led and hold it as our duty to grant you even of our own accord in your favor these things, whereby with effort each day more hearty you may be enabled for the honor of God himself and the spread of the Christian rule to carry forward your holy and praiseworthy purpose, so pleasing to a mortal God. We have indeed learned that you, who for a long time had intended to seek out and discover certain islands and mainlands remote and unknown, and not hitherto discovered by others, to the end that you might bring to the worship of our Redeemer and the profession of the Catholic faith to the residents and inhabitants, having been up to the present time greatly engaged in the siege and recovery of the kingdom itself of Granada, were unable to accomplish this holy and praiseworthy purpose. But the said kingdom having at length been regained, as was pleasing to the Lord, you, with the wish to fulfill your desire, choose our beloved son, Christopher Columbus, a man assuredly worthy and of the highest recommendation and fitted for so great an undertaking, whom you furnish with ships and men equipped for like designs, not without the greatest hardships, dangers, and expenses, to make diligent quest for these remote and unknown mainlands and islands throughout the sea, where, hold on, where, hitherto, Hitherto, right? Where hitherto no one has sailed. I know I'm jacking it up, but anyway. And they at length, with divine aid and with the utmost diligence, sailing in the ocean sea, discovered certain very remote islands and even mainlands that had not been discovered by others, wherein dwell many peoples living in peace, and as reported, going unclothed and not eating flesh. Can I repeat that? Because I'm reading to you the papal bull that shares with you that Christopher Columbus is Hitler in America, who was sent by the murderous regime of Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, by way of the popes of Rome, to conquer in the name of Christ. And what do they just say? They came amongst these islands wherein dwell very many peoples living in peace, and has, as reported, going unclothed, meaning we was butt naked and not eating flesh. We were vegan. Moreover, as your aforesaid envoys are of opinion, these very peoples living in the said islands and countries believe in one God, the Creator in heaven, and have seemed sufficiently disposed to embrace the Catholic faith and be trained in good morals. And it is hoped that where they instructed the name of the Savior, our Lord Jesus Christ, would easily be introduced into the said countries and islands. All of these countries are meat eating now, and all of them are Christian fearing, God fearing countries, and they're all third world, meaning that they're all in poverty, and they were all rich, and they're all at war, and they were all in peace, and all of them are wearing clothes, but they used to be unclothed. When you go to carnival and they getting naked, that's who they originally were. And when they wearing those colorful feathers, that's how they got down. But their titties were out and the ass was out. And people and men walked around barely clothed, and they were very sensual and very loving and at peace and very so they loved to make love. They were loving, they were peaceful, they were in paradise. You understand? They were not in shame. They were not walking around in shame. So a lot of women of today, they have it to where they don't like to wear a lot of clothes. And they're very sensuous and they're very beautiful and they like to show their body and whatnot. Nigga, that's in their DNA. That's in their DNA. That's something that's inherent in them. Jamaican women, Panamanian women, Dominican women, Haitian women, women from down south, women from Miami, city girls. You understand? Women from Brooklyn, from the Bronx, from Atlanta, from Dallas, all over. Very, from Africa. In Africa, they came into the same group of people who were not heavily dressed. They did not have to hide the goods. They were not covered up in all kind of clothing and whatnot. They were more freely. Maybe they had a lion's cloth to cover their phallus and whatnot. They didn't walk around with that. But many of them were unclothed. When you go and look at the pictures in Africa, many of our women did not wear, they were not wearing bras. They were not subjugating their breasts. And we were disciplined. We were not sexually promiscuous for no reason. We were not spilling our seeds. We were making children. We were fruitfully multiplying. You know what I mean? And we were holding on to our seed. If we did not want to create a seed, we were practicing semen retention and things of that nature. You know what I'm talking about? We had control of our sexual nature. But we were fun-loving. We were promiscuous in the sense that when the Europeans came, the village, the chiefs of the village and people were offering women to them. And they were taking full advantage of that. And like they said, we were vegan. We did not eat flesh. Now they eat pig everywhere. They eat swine everywhere. They're eating goats everywhere. They're eating pigs and they're eating all of these animals. And that's what put a lot of people to sleep. That's what calcified the pineal. That's what helped to take people who were living to be in the 200s and whatnot and gave them immortalized them. Talking about they came across cannibals. But they said that they didn't eat flesh. So they got to make their minds up. The Europeans are the cannibals. Moreover, as your aforesaid envoys are of opinion, these very peoples living in the said islands and countries believe in one God. Also, on one of the chief of these aforesaid islands, the said Christopher has already caused to be put together and build a fortress fairly equipped, wherein he has stationed as garrison certain Christians, companions of his, who are to make search for other remote and unknown islands and mainlands. In the islands and countries already discovered are found gold, spices, and very many other precious things of divers kinds and qualities. Wherefore, as becomes Catholic kings and princes, after earnest consideration of all matters, especially of the rise and spread of the Catholic faith, as was the fashion of your ancestors, kings of renowned memory, you have purposed with the favor of divine clemency to bring under your sway the said mainlands and islands with their residents and inhabitants, and to bring them to the Catholic faith. Hence, heartily commending in the Lord for this your holy and praiseworthy purpose, the desirous that it be duly accomplished, and that the name of our Savior be carried into these regions. We exhort you very earnestly in the Lord, and by your redemption of holy baptism, whereby you are bound to our apostolic commands, and by the bowels of the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ, enjoin strictly that scandals to the highest offense of God and dangers of souls probably might and would ensue. We, therefore, weighing all and singular the premises with due meditation. Hold on. Oh, that wasn't. The bowels of the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ enjoin strictly that in as much as with eager zeal for the true faith you design to equip and dispatch this expedition, you purpose also, as is your duty, to lead the peoples dwelling in those islands and countries to embrace the Christian religion, nor at any time let dangers or hardships deter you therefrom, with the stout hope and trust in your hearts that Almighty God will further your undertakings. And in order that you may enter upon so great an undertaking with great readiness and heartiness, endowed with the benefit of our apostolic favor, we of our own accord, not at your instant, nor the request of anyone else in your regard, but of our own soul largest, in certain knowledge and out of fullness of our apostolic behavior, by the authority of Almighty God, conferred upon us in blessing Peter and the vicarship of Jesus Christ, which we hold on earth, do by tenor of these presents, should any of said islands have been found by your envoys and captains, give, grant, and assign to you and your heirs and your successors, kings of Castile and Leon, forever, together with all their dominions, cities, camps, places, and villages, and all rights, jurisdictions, and all islands and mainlands found, discovered, and to be discovered towards the west and south, by drawing and establishing a line from the Arctic Pole, namely the north, to the Antarctic Pole, namely the south. That is the South and the North Pole of today. No matter whether the said mainlands and islands are found to be found in the direction of India or towards any other quarter, the said line to be distant 100 leagues towards the west and south from any of the islands commonly known as the Azores and Cape Verde. This is the Monroe Doctrine. So translation of the whole thing, I basically read, what is the Naga reading? This is called Inter Caetera, INTERCAETERA, okay? The bull, it's a papal bull, it's called the Inter Caetera from 1493. This is the receipts of the Europeans. Christopher Columbus, that's the spell. That's how it works. That's the spell that we're putting on ourselves. When we celebrate that day, and we celebrate Christopher Columbus Day, and then right after that, we celebrate Thanksgiving, that is spiritual warfare. That's the spell. That's how we lock ourselves into the spell. He is the Hitler of our times. He's the Hitler. He's the one who facilitated the Holocaust and the genocide. He is an enemy of all people melanated around the motherfucking world. His statues are to be toppled and taken down. That is the binding document. That's how you do it to yourself. That's how you do it to yourself. So practicing, you saw the proof that in the document that he's the one who said it, he's the one who they sent off to basically fulfill and to set this document into motion. And then that document led to widespread genocide and a widespread Holocaust that is lasting to this very day as we speak to each other. Okay, this is where slavery kicks in. This is going back to my ADOS brothers and sisters. Much love to everything that you're doing, but I'm helping you out in your when you write out your paperwork, when you write out your discovery, when you put together your class action suit, you have to include the Inter Caetera. You have to include the doctrine of discovery. You have to bring it directly to the doorsteps of that sovereign nation, because the Vatican cannot be that sovereign if they were granted the rights to dig up, to search for that girl that is missing. And they went into Vatican City and they went into their catacombs and they brought out bones. If it's a sovereign city and everything within it is sovereign, then they would not have the rights to excavate a goddamn catacomb of bones. They brought out thousands of bones. So if they could do that for a resident of Italy, then they could go ahead and begin to give you all of the stuff that they're hiding from your ancestors that they pillaged from the Americas in the name of the doctrine of discovery. Because remember, they said that they had gold on these islands, they had resources on these islands, and they had all kind of precious metals and stones. So all of that shit that they be on Instagram trying to show off stones, no, nigga, we need that back. The gold that the queen of all of that stuff that they wearing, the Tiffany jewelry, the shit at Sotheby's and whatnot that they're auctioning off, that's all stolen by way of this. None of the stuff that they had, we would have to rewind the clocks and send them back to who they originally were. And that's people who are wearing loincloth, burlap and whatnot. You know what I'm talking about? Not washing up. You know what I mean? Hygiene was on fleek. You know what I'm talking about? They did not have the finest of linens. Nigga, the linen was not crushed. They were not wearing silks. They did not have jewelry. They was rocking wooden Viking pieces. You know what I'm talking about? That's what they would have to go back to, because everything from the point of when that papal bull was written, that's the only thing that they are true possessors of. And a lot of that stuff they took from the Moors after they defeated them, the Saracens that they call them in these documents. That's a way to hide the name, right? They were wearing potato sacks. That's right. The European was wearing potato sacks. God damn it. And like dog fur. So you would have to rewind the clock and give them everything from that point forward, because everything from the time that they signed these the bull, the Inter Caetera Divina and the DUMSDIVERSAS, that's the shit that they all stole. That's what they stole, for them to be like, oh, that's what my grandparents did. I don't got nothing to do with that. Astaghfirullah, nigga. You're part of this doctrine. You're part of the you're part of the papal bull. No, not your grandparents profited or they benefited off of what the greats did. Do you get it? And it's really not that far away in the 14 and the 1500s. You know what I'm saying? But they're generationally, like they said, the popes and the kings and the queens in them and all of their ancestors, all of their descendants. And when they do the G20 summit, when they come together, when they meet and whatnot, this is what they're meeting to talk about. Because when they did the Berlin conference, when they all get together and they're at peace and they're not warring with each other, it's because they are coming together to officiate business yearly, to work out the books, to make sure that this doctrine, that these doctrines and these papal bulls and all of this stuff that they are basically operating under is still being respected and is still being honored and is still at play. That's what they're coming together to talk about. You know what I'm talking about? That part. So look, this is the Monroe Doctrine, all right? So we did, all right? The doctrine of discovery was the inspiration in the 1800s for the Monroe Doctrine. I'm going to show you how this shit started and how it's still in effect, because people will try to say, oh, that's mad long ago. That don't got nothing to do with today. Let's go. We got time. You know what I'm saying? In the 1800s, they came out with the Monroe Doctrine, which the U.S. hegemony used over the Western Hemisphere. They came with Manifest Destiny, which justified the American expansion westward by propagating the beliefs that the U.S. was destined to control all land from the Atlantic to the Pacific and beyond. So the United States of America hopped right into their papal bull bag. They like, oh, now let's get on our Roman shit. We're gonna do the same thing that they did with these papal bulls. We're gonna do that on this newly discovered land that we newly got freedom for. Now we're gonna expand west, and we're basically gonna commit genocide and Holocaust in the name of Manifest Destiny. And that's what they did. Okay? That's what they did. That's when they slaughtered the quote-unquote indigenous, aboriginal, melanated, copper-tone complexion Americans of the West. In 1823 Supreme Court case, Jonathan versus M. Intosh, the doctrine of discovery became part of U.S. federal law and was used to dispossess Native people of their land. In a unanimous decision, Chief Justice John Marshall writes that the principle of discovery gave European nations an absolute right to the new lands and Native peoples certain rights of occupancy, meaning you could occupy Wall Street, but nigga, you're not on Wall Street. You could occupy, you could occupy Bed-Stuy, but you don't own Bed-Stuy. You're not receiving the rent of Bed-Stuy. You're not part of the real estate of, you could occupy a lot of things. So they told the Indians, yeah, nigga, you could occupy the plant, you could occupy the reservation. You could occupy that. You could have a little tract of land on this land that we took from you, but you can't own nothing. So the Monroe Doctrine was the United States policy of opposing European colonialism in the Americas beginning in 1823. Translation, they told the Europeans, slow down, niggas. You know what I mean? We're going to take this shit. You're not going to be expanding in our territory. We got this. We're going to subjugate this. It stated that further effects by European nations to take control of any independent state in North or South America would be viewed as the manifestation of an unfriendly disposition towards the United States. You see the power of their pen game? You see the command of the language that they use to talk shit. You know what I mean? Legalese, the command of the Roman, of Latin, the command of the English language to get a point across, but to basically legally take some shit. That's, you got to learn the language. There's a different language that is spoken in these courtrooms. It's a different language spoken of by the corporations of America. It's not this shit. It's not Ebonics. It ain't the shit that we're talking right now. It's the language of law. It's legalese, something that the Moorish nation, the Moorish brothers and sisters and the sovereigns, they possess that. They're knowledgeable of that. I would highly recommend that our brothers and sisters who know how to speak these languages, teach these languages. Come up with an app or something that's like the what's that thing? The Rosetta Stone. We need Moors to innovate and to come up with some kind of intellectual property or something that's going to teach us, the masses, the ignorant, the profane. They need to learn the law that you know. They need to learn legalese. They need to learn how to decipher some of these, documents and whatnot. At the same time, the doctrine noted that the U.S. will recognize and not interfere with existing European colonies nor meddle in the eternal concerns of European countries. The doctrine was issued on December 2nd, 1823, at a time when nearly all Latin American colonies of Spain and Portugal had achieved or were at the point of gaining independence from the Portuguese and Spanish empires. President James Monroe first stated the doctrine during his 7th annual State of the Union address to Congress. The term Monroe Doctrine itself was coined in 1850. By the end of the 19th century, Monroe's declaration was seen as a defining moment in the foreign policy of the United States and one of its longest standing tenets. It would be invoked by many U.S. statesmen and several U.S. presidents, including Ulysses Grant, Theodore Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy, and Ronald Reagan. The intent and impact of the Monroe Doctrine persisted with only small variations for more than a century. Its stated objective was to free the newly independent colonies of Latin America from European intervention and avoid situations what would make the New World a battleground for the Old World powers, so that the U.S. could exert its own influence undisturbed. So these countries were getting independence. They were about to come up. They was about to become not third world. They was about to get their ones up. And then these niggas came in like, hold on, watch out. We got these niggas. Lay down, Juan. You know what I mean? Lay down, Juan Valdez. Now they're narco states. Now they're third world bastions. And now they're pedophilia islands and whatnot, sex trafficking islands. And, you know, they're subjugated. And then they got all of these GMO. They control the fruits. They control their agriculture. They subjugate them. And then who else got the sword on them? The Roman Catholic Church. It's not Spain and Portugal so much as the Roman Catholics. They're all in those islands. They're in Latin America, Central America, South America, laying them down. The Jesuits are there. European colonizers killed so many Native Americans that it changed the global climate. So I'm going to just show you the remnants of these papal bulls. It's one thing to read the papal bulls, but it's another thing to see what actually happened. When Europeans arrived in the Americas, they caused so much death and disease that it changed the global climate. European settlers killed 56 million indigenous people. It's more than that. Over about 100 years in South, Central, and North America, causing large swaths of farmland to be abandoned and reforested. Researchers at the University College London, or UCL, estimate the increase in trees and vegetation across the area the size of France resulted in a massive decrease in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, according to the study. Carbon levels changed enough to cool the earth by 1610, researchers found. Columbus arrived in 1492. So they talk about, oh, chattel slavery, oh my goodness. But what about the Holocaust from 1492 to 1610? What about that? In the name of fucking Jesus. What about that? Nigga, is genocide not worse than slavery? Because at least in slavery, did you die? Nigga, in slavery, at least you could buy yourself some freedom. Nigga, in a Holocaust, in a goddamn genocide, by some manics, by some fucking sociopaths coming out of the fucking caves in the bowels of Europe and whatnot. Remember, they sent the convicts over here. You know what I'm talking about? Some fucking Vikings. When you got people running down, they out here, Vikings going wild, chasing down naked fucking Caribbean women, right? Chasing down a bunch of Rihannas. They running down on them for their gold. They running down on them for their fucking lapis lazuli. They're running down on them for, you know what I'm saying, for their fucking, their neck pieces. Nigga, they're running down on them for their copper, for their quartz, for their feathers and whatnot. They're running down on them for all kind of shit. Their spices. They're running down on them for their fucking Goya seasonings. Nigga, what are you talking about? It was a Holocaust. And Europe got rich off of that. And Europe got motherfucking they came up off of the Holocaust in the Americas, nigga. That was the beginning of slavery. That was the beginning of their crusades. What are you talking about? And those people who they was bodying was us. Them people that the same people who are at Carnival go on Google Carnival. Go and look at those colorful fucking Rio, nigga. Remember Rio that you looked at with your child in Brazil when they was at Carnival? Rio 1 and 2. Remember all of those colors? You see the shit when Rihanna be wearing them feathers? We've been doing that. That's why. What you think? They learned that after slavery, nigga? What do you think? That's a custom that came after slavery? You think that? What are you talking about? They've been doing that. That they look so natural in their feathers because, nigga, that's who the fuck was on the islands before the cracker got there. That's why they look so comfortable. That's why they look so at home. That was not a result of the colonialization of those islands. They allowed them to continue doing the carnival. It was already there. It was already there. Cuba, Brazil, Trinidad, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, all of that. Even in New Orleans. That's who they were bodying. That's who they came across. That's who they holocausted. That's who they put in chains and shipped them niggas to the 13 colonies and shit like that. It killed so many people that they changed the carbon levels of a planet, bro. CO2 and climate had been relatively stable until this point, said UCL geography professor Mark Maslin, one of the study's co-authors. So this is the first major change we see in the Earth's greenhouse gases. Before this study, some scientists had argued the temperature changes in the 1600s, called the Little Ice Age, was caused only by natural forces. There was an ice age in the 1600s. Okay, not long ago, there was an ice age. For all of the climate change people of the days and everybody talking about climate change, understand the nuances in the goddamn conversation. There was an ice age in the 1600s that they caused by holocausting half of the planet. Before this study, some scientists had argued, by combining archaeological evidence, historical data, and analysis of carbon found in Antarctic ice, the UCL researchers showed how the reforestation directly caused by the Europeans' arrival was a key component of the global chill. Wow. For once, we've been able to balance all the boxes and realize that the only way the Little Ice Age was so intense is because of the genocide of millions of people, Maslin told CNN. What the fuck? Researchers analyzed Antarctic ice, which traps atmospheric gas, and can now reveal how much carbon dioxide was in the atmosphere centuries ago. The ice cores showed that there was a larger dip in CO2 in 1610, which was caused by the land and not the oceans, said Alexander Koch, lead author of the study. A small shift in temperatures, about 1/10 of a degree in the 17th century, led to colder winters, frosty summers, and failing harvests. The implications of the study go beyond climate science and also contribute to research in geography and history, Maslin said, noting that deaths of indigenous Americans directly contributed to the success of the European economy. Natural resources and food shipped from the New World helped Europeans' population to expand. It also allowed people to stop farming for sustenance and begin working in other industries for spare money. The really weird thing is the depopulation of the Americas may have inadvertently allowed the Europeans to dominate the world, Maslin said. It also allowed for the Industrial Revolution and for Europeans to continue that domination. There you have it. It's not in my words. It's in their words. Okay? It's in their words. Here's the Regalian Doctrine. The Regalian Doctrine, also known as Jura Regalia, is a fiction of Spanish colonial law that has been said to apply to all Spanish colonial holdings. More specifically, the Regalian Doctrine refers to the feudal principle that private title to land must emanate directly or indirectly from the Spanish crown, with the latter retaining the underlying title. Lands and resources not granted by the crown remain part of the public domain over which none but the sovereigns hold rights. Generally, under this concept, private title to land must be traced to some grant, express or implied, from the Spanish crown or its successors, the American colonial government, and thereafter the Philippine Republic. In a broader sense, the term refers to royal rights or the rights to which the king has by virtue over his prerogatives. Based on the laws of the Indies, the capacity of the state to own or acquire property is the state's power of dominion, as cited by Cruz versus Denier case. This was the foundation for the early Spanish decrees embracing the feudal theory of Jura Regalia. The Regalian Doctrine, or Jura Regalia, a Western legal concept that was first introduced by the Spaniards into the country through the laws of the Indies. Go and research the laws of the Indies and the royal sigillets. The laws of the Indies, i.e., more specifically, Law 14, Title 12, Book 4 of the Novísima Recopilación de Leyes de las Indias, set the policy of the Spanish crown with respect to the Philippine Islands in the following manner. We, having acquired full sovereignty over the Indies and all lands, territories, and possessions not heretofore ceded away by our royal predecessors or by us or in our name, still pertaining to the royal crown and patrimony. It is our will that all lands which are held without proper and true deeds of grant be restored to us as they belong to us, in order that after reserving before all what to us, to our viceroys, audiences, and governors may seem necessary for public squares, ways, pastures, hold on. All right, let me read that again. So they're basically saying that they have full sovereignty, full governance, full control over all of these lands. What am I reading? I'm reading a papal bull called the Regalian Doctrine, Regalian Doctrine. Go and research it and do your research and do your due diligence. The Regalian Doctrine, okay? That's the Spanish doctrine where they have control over the islands, all of the Caribbean, all of the islands that they control, right? So let me go back to what it said. We, having acquired full sovereignty over the Indies and all lands, territories, and possessions, not heretofore ceded away by our royal predecessors or by us or in our name, still pertaining to the royal crown and patrimony. It is our will that all lands which are held without proper and true deeds of grant be restored to us as they belong to us, in order that they are reserving before all what to us or to our viceroys, audiencias, and governors may seem necessary for public squares, ways, patches, and commons in those places which are peopled, taking into consideration not only their present condition, but also their future and their probable increase, and after distributing to the natives what may be necessary for tillage and pasturage, confirming them in what they now have and giving them more if necessary, all the rest of said lands may remain free and unencumbered for us to dispossess as if we may wish. Translation, they taking your shit, all right? Look at Puerto Rico. Look at what Puerto Rico is going through right now with the protests on getting rid of their mayors, right? That's showing you that to this day, they're pillaging and they're raping as they wish. The Philippines passed to Spain by virtue of discovery and conquest. Consequently, all lands became the exclusive patrimony and dominion of the Spanish crown. The Spanish government took charge of distributing the lands by issuing royal grants and concessions to Spaniards, both military and civilian. Private land titles could not only be acquired from the government, either by purchase or by various modes of grant from the thing. Okay. Manifest destiny, a phrase coined in 1845, expressed the philosophy that drove 19th century U.S. territorial expansion. Manifest destiny held the United States was destined by God, its advocates believed, to expand its dominion and spread democracy and capitalism across the entire North American continent. Louisiana Purchase. Thanks to a high birth rate and brisk immigration, the U.S. population exploded in the first half of the 19th century from around 5 million people in 1800 to more than 23 million in 1850. Such rapid growth, as well as two economic depressions in 1819 and 1839, would drive millions of Americans westward in search of new land and new opportunities. President Thomas Jefferson kicked off the country's westward expansion in 1803 with the Louisiana Purchase, which at some 828,000 square miles, nearly doubled the size of the United States. In addition to sponsoring the western expansion of Lewis and Clark, 1805 to 1807, Jefferson also set his sights on Spanish Florida, a process that was finally concluded in 1819 under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which ended the Mexican-American War in 1848, added an additional 525,000 square miles of U.S. territory, including all of the parts of which is now California, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, and Wyoming. Despite the lofty idealism of Manifest Destiny, the rapid territorial expansion over the first half of the 19th century resulted not only in war with Mexico, but the dislocation and brutal mistreatment of Native American, Hispanic, and other non-European occupants of the territories now being occupied by the United States. U.S. expansion also fueled the growing debate over slavery by raising the pressing question of whether new states being admitted into the Union would allow slavery or not, a conflict that would eventually lead to the Civil War. President Thomas Jefferson. Okay. The critics of that treaty faulted Monroe and his Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams, for yielding to Spain what they considered legitimate claims on Texas, where many Americans continue to settle. Cries for the re-annexation of Texas increased after Mexico, having won its independence from Spain, passed a law suspending U.S. immigration into Texas in 1830. Nonetheless, remember, there's this whole thing about immigration where they're sending people back to Mexico, but Mexico won its independence from Spain and passed a law suspending U.S. immigration into Texas in 1813. Nonetheless, there's still more Anglo settlers in Texas than Hispanic ones, and in 1838, after Texas won its own independence, its new leaders sought to join the United States. The administrations of both Andrew Jackson and Martin Van Buren resisted such calls, fearing both war with Mexico and opposition from Americans who believed calls from annexations were linked to the desire to expand slavery into the Southwest. But John Tyler, who won the presidency in 1840, was determined to proceed with the annexation. An agreement concluded in April 1844 that made Texas eligible for admission as a U.S. territory and possibly later as one or more states. Despite opposition to this agreement in Congress, the pro-annexation candidate James K. Polk won the 1844 election, and Tyler was able to push the bill through and sign it before he left office, coining of Manifest Destiny. By the time Texas was admitted into the Union as a state in December 1845, the idea that the United States must inevitably expand westward all of the way to the Pacific Ocean had taken firm hold among people from different regions, classes, and political persuasions. The phrase Manifest Destiny which emerged as the best-known expression of this mindset, first appeared in the editorial published in the July-August 1845 issue of the Democratic Review. In it, the writer criticized the opposition that still lingered against the annexation of Texas, urging national unity on behalf of the fulfillment of our manifest destiny to overspread the continent allotted by Providence for the free development of our yearly multiplying millions. Okay? It appeared in nearly identical context in the July 1848 article in the New York Morning News. Its originator is believed to be John O'Sullivan, the editor of both the Democratic Review and the Morning News at this time. That December, another Morning News article mentioned Manifest Destiny in reference to the Oregon Territory, another new frontier over which the United States was eager to assert its dominion. Oregon Territory, an 1842 treaty between Great Britain and the United States, partially resolved the question of where to draw the Canadian border, but left open the question of the Oregon Territory, which stretched from the Pacific coast to the Rocky Mountains over an area including what is now Oregon, Idaho, Washington State, and most of British Columbia. Polk, an ardent proponent of Manifest Destiny, had won election with the slogan 54-40 or fight, a reference to the potential northern boundary of Oregon as latitude 5440, and called U.S. claims to Oregon clear and unquestionable in his inaugural address. But as president, Polk wanted to get the issue resolved with the United States so the United States could move on to acquiring California from Mexico. In 1848, his administration agreed to compromise whereby Oregon would be split along the 49th parallel, narrowly avoiding a crisis with Britain. Impact of Manifest Destiny. By the time the Oregon question was settled, the United States had entered into an all-out war with Mexico, driven by the spirit of Manifest Destiny and territorial expansion. All right? The debate continued as the war went on, with many of the East arguing that the annexation of all of Mexico, which at the time included all of California and what later became the states of Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and parts of other. You see how big Mexico was. The Manifest Destiny argument was promoted by much of the North and abandoned by much of the South. The Northern contingent believed it would promote national security and forever secure an anti-slavery majority. The South opposed it for racial and religious reasons, fearful of an introduction of a large number of Catholics. The issue was still being debated when peace commissioners met following Mexico's military defeat. The Mexican sessions, the cries of Manifest Destiny, and the All Mexico movement they inspired, as in the earlier All Oregon movement, did not succeed in bringing out the annexation of all Mexico, nor had they succeeded in acquiring all of Oregon. The compromise with the British over Oregon was to avert the threat of war. The compromise with the Mexican government was with a defeated enemy. U.S. peace commissioners did not insist on annexing the annexation. I guess it's annexation of the territories held by the U.S. armies in Mexico. Instead, they concentrated on the islands which now make up the American Southwest. Okay, instead they concentrated on the lands which now make up the American Southwest. The Mexican cessions were the third largest land acquisitions in American history, following the Louisiana Purchase and the Alaska Purchase. The vehicle through which the cessions occurred was the 1848 Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. The territories which were ceded to the United States in the treaty were sparsely populated for the most part, which made the treaty acceptable to the Southerners who had argued against allowing non-white American citizenship by annexation. And its vast lands, including all of California, meant that the United States controlled all of the territory, which would eventually become the contiguous 48 states. After some border adjustments, negotiating through the treaties for fervent proponents of manifest destiny, America's victory and the cessions of the American lands was proof of the concept. The language of the treaty did not openly cede the lands to the United States. Instead, it redefined Mexico's borders with the United States. This allowed the cessions to appear as voluntary rather than the United States seizing the lands by right of conquest. Mexico was compensated for the land by $15 million when the Senate ratified the treaty. The compensation did not transfer any money to Mexico. Instead, it was credited to Mexico's debt to the United States, with part of which was from allowing itself to be defeated by the Americans during the war. Since 1821, when Mexico became independent from Spain, 54% of its territory had been lost to the United States. That's through the Monroe Doctrine. As you can see it working. The seizure of the formerly Mexican lands exasperated the growing issue of abolitionism in the United States. The United States, okay? Only a year following the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, gold was discovered in California, to be followed by the fabulous silver strikes in Nevada. California became a state in 1850. Settlers streamed to the west. Okay? In the Washington administration, his first Secretary of War, Henry Cox, formulated the manner in which lands could be purchased from the American Indian tribes. It was established that only the federal government could purchase the lands by negotiating with the leaders of these tribes, which claimed them, with the process formalized via a treaty. The treaties were not for the purpose of displacing the Indians unless they so wished. Instead, official government policy was to encourage them to be assimilated into American society. Following the War of 1812, this policy changed to one of Indian removal. The Indian removal was justified in the eyes of the proponents of manifest destiny because they, just as did other civilized nations, stood as an obstacle in the path of a duty imposed by divine providence. In 1862, with the United States at war with itself, Abraham Lincoln pushed Congress to pass the Homestead Act, long stalled in Congress prior to the Civil War. After the Southern states ceded their representatives and senators who had opposed the act as it would add to the majority of non-slave states were absent, Congress passed the act which opened much of the lands obtained from the Mexican cessions to settlement. The Homestead Act of 1862 offered nearly free lands to adults who had not joined the war against the Union. Immigrants who had applied for citizenships were included in those who could apply and were often encouraged to do so. Andrew Johnson was a major proponent of the act. Qualified applicants received a tract of 160 acres with the proviso that they must occupy the land, erect improvements, and operate a farm. The land was to be properly titled by the territorial government in which it was located. After the minimum 5-year period fulfilled the contract with the government, the owner was free to do what he wished with the land or any portion of the holdings. Both during the and aftermath of the Civil War, when the act was extended to include former slaves, settlers streamed into the West. This obviously pushed back on the Indians who saw the open ranges for bisons being broken into farms and settlements appearing along an under construction transcontinental railroad. To the proponents of Manifest Destiny, the remaining Indians on the plains needed to be removed. Leading advocates of Manifest Destiny, for the most part, welcomed some of the immigrants who came to the America to avail themselves of the Homestead Act, depending upon which country they came from. Others did not. Recognizing that the Indians would fight led to a campaign to eliminate much of the Plains Indians' food supply, through which the destruction of the buffalo herds on which they depended for food and shelter. The fate of the Indians, as the western lands were increasingly settled, could no longer be location to sites further west, but to reservations upon which their way of living could no longer be achieved. Manifest Destiny meant the duty to subdue and improve all of the land so that all could enjoy the gifts of American liberty and the perfection of American democracy. It was the duty of white men all across the lands held by the United States, according to its supporters. At its core, the concept of Manifest Destiny was entwined in the belief that the success of the United States was foreordained by God. Throughout its history, references to the Almighty have bestowed the United States with opportunities to be had nowhere else on earth, had been uttered by his leader. Abraham Lincoln referred to the United States as the last best hope of earth. The Declaration of Independence placed a firm reliance on the belief that its signers and the nation it created were protected by divine providence. This core belief led to another element of the concept, that of the virtues of the American political system. Since the founding fathers were divinely guided in their work, it was only logical that the system they created was blessed with virtues which exceeded all other forms of government. The proponents of this concept of Manifest Destiny extolled these virtues both as they pushed westward expansion, as they called for war with societies which stood in the way, since those societies were obviously to them inferior. John O'Sullivan, who coined the term in 1845, claimed that it reflected the need for the United States to establish on earth the moral dignity and salvation of man. O'Sullivan, however, did not support war as a means of completing America's manifest destiny. It was O'Sullivan's belief that other nations would observe the superiority of the American system and the success of its citizens, and desirous of the same for themselves would either adopt the American system or petition to join as another state, with either state in effect or republic. This was a far cry from the practices and events who were a result of Manifest Destiny advocates who came after him. Once the Southern Democrats, who wanted America to remain a largely agrarian society, came to the support of the Manifest Destiny, at least as it pertains to free whites, it became a subject of ridicule amongst those supporting industrialization. Manifest Destiny is often considered to have been complete shortly after the Civil War, with the reduction of the American Indians on the Great Plains and in the Southwest and in the settlement of the West. This is incorrect. From its inception, the belief extended to the United States' duty to bring the virtues of its system to the rest of the world. Although the term fell out of use gradually during the first half of the 19th century and the early years of the 20th, it remained very much part of American expansion as it acquired overseas territories and engaged in other wars. Following the Civil War and the completion of the Reconstruction of the United States, became more involved in international affairs. The purchase of Alaska extended America's borders far into the Pacific along the long chains of Aleutian Islands. The United States had long coveted the island of Cuba, as well as the key Pacific possessions, for the support of its navy and for the riches they offered. Right? Manifest Destiny did not stop with the conquest of the continental United States. It expanded as believers in this concept continued to pursue their goal, expressed by O'Sullivan as the moral dignity and salvation of man. Okay? After the United States, the empires, the European empires of Europe, the Russian, the German, the French, and of course the British, viewed this expression of Manifest Destiny, if that's what it was, with increasing, hold on. They viewed this expression of manifest destiny with increasing alarm. The Germans, British, and Dutch competed for the wealth of the Southwest Pacific with its reserves of oil, rubber, and coal. So did the emerging Japanese Empire. From the end of the Spanish-American War through the end of the Cold War, the United States considered the Pacific to be a vital part of its national interest and still remains military bases and satellite tracking and communication stations throughout its vast expanse. After the United States defeated Spain in the Spanish-American War, the Philippines became American territory ceded by Spain but not surrendered by the Filipinos. America inherited a war which quickly became both bloody and controversial. In the Senate, during the debate over ratification of the Treaty of Paris, which ended the war, several senators opposed the U.S. takeover of the islands. Senator Benjamin Tillman of South Carolina, an unapologetic white supremacist, argued on the Senate floor against ratification of the treaty. Why are we bent on forcing them upon them a civilization not suited to them? Tillman also read aloud on the floor of the Senate several stanzas from a poem by the English writer Rudyard Kipling, which was published in the New York Sun 3 days later. The poem was entitled The White Man's Burden and was written to address the American occupation of the Philippines. Its publication was intended to garner support for the Treaty of Paris. It directly linked with the American concept of manifest destiny. The poem exhorted Americans to meet the need to supervise and civilize the captive peoples that were half devil, half child. Its publication both supported imperialist ambition and defended the subjugated as being made better by imperialists. Britain sent thousands of its convicts to America, not just Australia. As Anthony Vava explains in his books, Bound with an Iron Chain, historians have sought to cover up the fact that so many prisoners were sent to America. Throughout the 19th century, many historians simply ignored the institution. And those who did not recognize it usually claimed that nearly all the people who were transported were political prisoners. No less a figure than Thomas Jefferson himself tried to downplay the history of penal transportation to America. Writing in 1786, Jefferson insisted that even if British criminals had been sent, they must have been small in number, except that wasn't true. British convicts came over in droves, and free Americans weren't too happy about it. In fact, even before the Transportation Act of 1718 really opened the doors for Britain's dumping of undesirables in the Americas, some colonies tried to pass laws that would prohibit the practice. In 1670, authorities in Virginia passed an act that prohibited convicts from being sent to the area. Thus, unsurprisingly, was overruled by the king. Pennsylvania tried to do the same thing in 1722 by passing a tax. A joke about Australia. Oh, okay. I'm reading it backwards. A joke about Australia is that it was founded by a bunch of criminals. And from 1788 until 1868, Britain did send roughly 164,000 convicts to the land down under. America's dirty little secret, the same exact thing was happening here. In fact, experts estimate that 52,000 British prisoners were shipped off to colonial America. Britain has been shipping convicts to America for decades before they started sending them to Australia. In fact, it was precisely because of America's fight for independence that the Brits had to start sending their criminals to Australia. But from 1718 until 1775, convict transportation to the American colonies flourished. Some estimates claim that almost 10% of migrants to America during the time were British convicts. I say 60%. And then when you fast forward to this day and you see cargo ships owned by J.P. Morgan Chase seized with 20 tons of cocaine, I'm only here to let you know that the founders of this country are originally convicts. The founders of this country are originally murderers, smugglers, traffickers, kidnappers. You know what I'm talking about? Degenerates. So they're following the doctrine. They're obeying the doctrine, and if you look at it through those lenses, you will begin to see their behaviors, and you will begin to see how they move, and you will begin to see that this government is still obeying, still adhering to, and still following, and still holding up to a high reverence the carriers, the ones who carry out their military leaders and their thinkers and their presidents who carry out foreign policy and domestic policy, which helps to strengthen and helps to stay the course of manifest destiny, and by way of the doctrine of discovery. So here we have, on July the 12th, 2019, Governor Bill Lee signs Nathan Bedford Forrest Day into proclamation, and he considers it. Now, Tennessee is honoring Nathan Bedford Forrest, a slave trader, Confederate general, and Ku Klux Klan leader today. According to a state law, the Republican Governor Bob Lee and his predecessors have kept into place. Okay? The proclamation signed by Lee and Republican Governor Bill Haslam before him calls Bedford a recognized military figure in American history and a native Tennessean, and encourages citizens to join the governor in his worthy observance. Recent controversy around Confederate monuments across the country, the state of Tennessee is today celebrating Forrest, a man who took part in slaughtering African Americans after the Civil War as the leader of the KKK, and whose bust still sits in the Tennessee state capitol. According to Tennessee law, each year the governor must sign proclamations for 6 state holidays, including one for Forrest and another one for Confederate Army leader Robert E. Lee. Okay? At the same time, the governor said he regrets going to Old South parties at Auburn University as part of the fraternal Kappa Alpha Order, which reportedly sees Confederate Army General Robert E. Lee as a spiritual founder. So the governor of Tennessee belongs to a fraternal order, a fraternity, basically a college frat, where their spiritual leader is Robert E. Lee, all right? This is in Auburn University in the Old South. Any football players, melanated football players on Auburn, you need to protest your goddamn football team until they get rid of this goddamn fraternity who sees Robert E. Lee as a spiritual founder. There's a problem with that, all right? There's a problem that the governor it belongs to a fraternal order that sees Robert E. Lee as a spiritual founder. But this is what we find in these places, especially in the Deep South. You know what I mean? So here we have Witch O'Connell, Snitch O'Connell, Mitch O'Connell, and he opposes reparations. He says some real slimy, greasy stuff about reparations. But look, Majority Leader, who is the third in power underneath the president and the vice president, is a direct descendant of 2 slave owners in his family line. All right, James McConnell and Richard Daley, 2 of the Kentucky Republicans' great-great-grandfather, owned at least 14 slaves. All right, and 19th century census records show. Okay, so he said, I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago, when none of us are currently living, are responsible. It's not a good idea. He said that in June. We tried to deal with our original sin of slavery by fighting a civil war, by passing landmark Civil War legislation. We've elected an African-American president. Nobody smacked him when he said that, right? But we talk about all of these Europeans. We talk about what they've done and how great they were and what they brought to the Americas. And I've said it many times that they brought nothing to America. The government of America, the Constitution of America, and everything that you see, a lot of the architecture in America was already here when they got here, all right? So let me read this. Much has been said about the inspiration of the ancient Iroquois' Great League of Peace in planting the seeds that led to the formation of the United States of America and its representative democracy. The Iroquois Confederacy, founded by the great peacemaker in 1142, is the oldest living participatory democracy on earth. In 1988, the U.S. Senate paid tribute with a resolution that said, The confederation of the original 13 colonies into one republic was influenced by the political system developed by the Iroquois Confederacy, as were many of the democratic principles which were incorporated into the Constitution itself. The people of the Iroquois Confederacy, also known as the Six Nations, refer to themselves as the Haudenosaunee. It means people of the longhouse, and refers to their lintly bark-covered longhouses that housed many families. Theirs was a sophisticated and thriving society of well over 5,000 people when the first European explorers encountered them in the early 17th century. The Iroquois Confederacy originally consisted of 5 separate nations: the Mohawks, the people of the Flint Country, the Onondaga, the people of the hills, the Cayuga, where they land on the boats, the Oneida, the people of the Standing Stone, and the Seneca, the people of the Big Hill, living in the northeast region of the North America. The Tuscarora Nation, people of the Shirt, migrated into the Iroquois country in 1722. Okay? The great peacemaker brought peace to the 5 nations. He's the one who helped them form what is known now as the Iroquois Confederacy. Okay? They had intertribal conflicts. The cost of war was high. It weakened their societies. The great peacemaker and the wise Hiawatha, chief of the Onondaga tribe, the Onondaga tribe, contemplated how best to bring peace between the nations. They traveled to each of the 5 nations to share their ideas of peace. A council meeting was called. The Hiawatha presented the great law of peace. It united the 5 nations into the League of Nations. You heard of the League of Nations before. That's what the United Nations was calling themselves, or the Iroquois Confederacy. And it became the basis for the Iroquois Confederacy Constitution. That Constitution is what the Constitution is formed today, the Constitution of today. How the Iroquois' great law of peace shaped U.S. democracy. So none of that is them. None of it is them. Okay? None of it. All right? So on that note, I'm going to pause it. No, we're going to get into the Deep South real quick. We're going to run through the Deep South. All right? So the Deep South, where the American hierarchy is in full effect, where the white man is on top. This is American hierarchy, but the foundation of where this thing is really emanating from is in places such as the Deep South. All right? And I'm going to explain why I'm saying that. Black American men are at the bottom of the totem pole. Black American women on top of them. Hispanics, Black immigrants on top of them. Asians, Indians, and Middle Easterns on top of them. Whites, Jews, and the LGBTQRSTVUX on top of all of them, all right? So that will be the American hierarchy that we find ourselves. The Solid South is the southern states of the United States, who became the Democratic Party following the Civil War. This occurred as a reaction against the Republicans who had prosecuted the war for the North and inflicted upon the South the depredations of Reconstruction. Okay, the term Deep South is defined in many varieties of ways. Most definitions include the states Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Texas is sometimes included due to its history of slavery and as being part of the Confederate States of the United States of America. All right, the solid South or Southern Bloc was the electoral voting bloc of the states of the Southern United States for issues that were regarded as partially important to the interests of Democrats in the Southern states. And we're not talking about Democrats the way you know them now. We're talking about Democrats, Dixie Democrats, the KKK back in the days before it switched over and Republicans became Democrats and Democrats become Republicans. Southern Bloc existed especially between the end of Reconstruction in 1877 and the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. During this period, the Democratic Party controlled state legislators. Most local and state office holders in the South were Democrats, as were federal politicians elected from these states. Southern Democrats disenfranchised blacks in every state of the former Confederacy at the turn of the 20th century. This resulted essentially in a one-party system in which a candidate's victory in Democratic Party elections was tantamount to election to the office itself. White primaries where other means that the Democrats used to consolidate their political power, excluding blacks from voting in primaries. The Solid South is a loose term referring to the states that made up the voting bloc at any point in time. The Southern region, as defined by U.S. consensus, compromises 16 states plus Washington, D.C. Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Washington, D.C., West Virginia, Alabama, Kentucky, Mississippi, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas. This definition of the Southern region does not necessarily correspond precisely to the states in the definition of the Solid South. For example, Maryland was rarely considered part of the Solid South, whereas Missouri, though classified as a Midwestern state by U.S. Census, often was. A former slave state, Missouri, became dominated by the Democratic Party after the Civil War. Okay? After the 1960s and the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, ensuring federal enforcement of registration and voting, African Americans in the region were able to register and vote, rejoining the political system for the first time since the turn of the 20th century. While nearly 6 million African Americans had left the region by then in the Great Migration to other areas of the country, right? Most of those who remained became affiliated with the Democratic Party. Its national leaders had supported the civil rights movements. Around the same time, white conservatives began to shift to the Republican Party, which by 2000 attracted most of the white voters. African Americans have elected numerous candidates of their choice, generally Democrats from districts where their votes have been concentrated. Okay. So this is the Solid South, okay? The Solid South gave rise, the Deep South gave rise to the KKK and these hate groups, white terrorism, okay? White terrorism, you know? And a political bloc, a political power, a political entity, a political front. The deep state comes out of this. A shadow government, you know, a KKK, a invisible empire. You understand? An invisible empire rises out of this, okay? It rises out of this, all right? So this is how they voted in elections, okay? This is how they vote in elections, as you can see, okay? So don't be fooled by Democrat and Republican because it's interchangeable because they switched it up, right? So just giving you some stats on the Deep South and what they represent. Whites killed Negroes and seized the city of Wilmington. This was a coup d'etat that took place in Wilmington, North Carolina. This is accredited with the beginning of the Deep South, okay? The lost history of an American coup d'etat, all right? They annihilated these people. The Wilmington Insurrection of 1898, also known as the Massacre, also known as the Race Riot, the Wilmington Race Riot. It occurred on November 10th. It's considered a turning point in post-Reconstruction North Carolina politics. The event initiated an era of more severe racial segregation and effective disenfranchisement of African Americans throughout the South, a shift already underway since passage by Mississippi of a new constitution in 1890, raising barriers to voter registration. Laura Edwards wrote in Democracy Betrayed, what happened in Wilmington became an affirmation of white supremacy, not just in that one city, but in the South and in the nation as a whole, as it affirmed that invoking whiteness eclipsed the legal citizenship, individualized right, and equal protection under the law of blacks. It originally described by certain white Americans as a race riot caused by blacks. However, over time, with more facts publicized, the event has come to be seen as a coup d'etat, the violent overthrow of a duly elected government by a group of whites. Multiple causes, social, political, and economic, brought it about. It is claimed to be the only such incident in American history. Through late Reconstruction era violence, determined or helped determine many other government elections in the South in favor of the Democrats. The coup occurred after the state's white Southern Democratic Party conspired and led a mob of 2,000 white men to overthrow the legitimately elected local fusionist government. They expelled opposition black and white political leaders from the city, destroyed the property and businesses of black citizens built up since the Civil War, including the only black newspaper in the city, and killed an estimate 60 to more than 300 people. I say that the number is a lot higher. I say that the numbers is way higher. All right. This is when the Deep South was started. Okay. This is when the Deep South was solidified. I mean, the solid South, the political aspect. Not to say that it didn't exist before, but this is a new phase of it. This is when the solid South becomes crystallized. All right. This is when all of the lynchings and stuff like that. Now look at Louisiana, right? Louisiana is the world's prison capital. The state imprisons more of its people. All right. Look at it by race, all right? This is the solid South that we're looking at, all right? This is General Lee, General Jackson. These are the people that they're celebrating in Tennessee. These are hate groups, 1995 to 2015. Look at the South. Look how the South is proliferated with these hate groups, even all the way up into the East. Look at all of these areas proliferated with all of these hate groups, okay? Look at these active groups. All right, there's 84 active hate groups in Texas, the most of any state. All right, world incarceration rates. Look at Louisiana at the top. United States is at the top. Then Georgia, which is part of Russia. Look at the lynches that took place after the formation of the Solid South, after the formation of white terrorism, after the formation of what they had when they locked down these areas, which caused the Great Migration. Now people were running from this. All right. This is these purges. This is white terrorism. This is purge. This is murder. This is Holocaust. This is genocide. This is barbarity. This is savagery. This is the Monroe Doctrine. This is the Papal Bull. This is the Auto de Fe. This is the Doctrine of Discovery. This is white Christians. This is white Catholics. This is Roman Catholics. This is the crowns of Europe active in America, because these are all European immigrants right there in the backdrop that you see right here. Remember, they let the immigrants in. They let them repopulate through the Homestead Act and all of these things. They were in places burning and hanging and killing and shooting and chopping up and eating, subjugating and dominating and doing all of that to the Americas. And like I said, you don't know who the quote unquote Indians are, because you think that the Indians are only Mexicans and things that you don't know. You don't have no idea about the Aboriginal copper tone complexion Indians that they were killing. 5,000 saw a Negro burn. That's a ritual. Mob in Omaha lynches and they lynches the Negro and attempts to hang the mayor. Mob lynches Tom Owens. Thousands participate in Vengeance for Nita. Klan kills 5. Okay? So that gets us into the deep state. All right? So here we have this man called Larry King, all right? Larry King is from Omaha, okay?
One of the grimmest and most disturbing examples of heinous crimes instituted